Zero watching?
Hey, hey everybody, it's me. Today I got my pupper here. Look at the camera, buddy. Look at the camera. Hi. Hi. My hair is messed up. I didn't comb my hair. I got my pupper here. Alright, look at the camera, buddy. One waiting. I don't understand. I guess that's me. It says nobody's viewing right now. But hey, I wanted to talk about the scientific revolution. And the scientific revolution is, of course, I'm sad that only one person came, but I guess everybody is just excited about the AP test, and they're all watching this later. So if you're watching this later, hello, hi, and we'll talk. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. And I cannot find what I'm looking for. That's not great. Hmm. Well, now. Huh. One viewer. Is it me? Am I the viewer? Or is somebody else? Say hi, whoever that is. I'll turn off my thing here. So what I did was I copied over my my stuff, and I thought I copied it onto my desktop, and I did. Okay, here we go. Look at this bad boy right here. Whoop. Boop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, yep, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to minimize you, and I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to slide over here, and nobody's asking questions, but if anybody does ask questions, I'll be able to address that. Hey, Cassie Carr. So can you see the thing? It looks like no. It's just me. That's not what I'm going for. Sharing a window. I should be sharing this window. Is it sharing that window? No. Let's see. It definitely does not seem to be working. But it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Oh, it is. Okay, it's working. Okay. So, scientific revolution. Let's talk about it. If I occasionally just stop and cuddle my puppy, that's fine. He's kind of in an affectionate mood. I apologize for that. You can hear me fine, right, Cassie, and all that? You can see everything right? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. In here, I have, boop, nope. I have, okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So Nicholas Copernicus. A lot of people think that the scientific revolution begins with Nicholas Copernicus because Copernicus is the one who challenges the Catholic Church, challenges these Greek and technically Ptolemy is Greek as well, but Aristotle, who had kind of been the standard bearer that Christianity had been using as far as its ideas of how the world works. And Copernicus says Aristotle and Ptolemy, who was a Greek living in Egypt, were wrong. You see, Aristotle and Ptolemy had the idea that the world, or the Earth, was the center of the universe, and that's geocentric theory. And geocentric theory is obviously incorrect, but the Christians liked it because it kind of backed up all the stuff that they were saying about, God creating the world, and it just made sense that the Earth would be the center of everything. And Copernicus, who actually is tasked with making a new calendar by the Catholic Church, while he's doing his research, and he comes up with the calendar that we pretty much use nowadays with the leap year and 365 days. He says, like, wait, though, I'm studying all these observations, and it just doesn't make sense. I really think the sun must be at the center. But he doesn't want to offend the Catholic Church. So he writes a book, which is not published until his death. And at that point, he says in it, hey, I dedicate this to the Pope, love you, not trying to contradict you, but I think you might be wrong about this one thing. Good night. And it doesn't cause a lot of trouble. You might expect that it would, but Copernicus is dead. And outside of, people who are astronomer type people, it doesn't really affect too much. But then later on, one of these guys that believes in Copernicus, well, I don't mean to believe in him, obviously he exists, but that believes that Copernicus was right. Tycho Brahe is this Danish guy, and he has an observatory built for him by the King of Denmark, and he's making all kinds of observations. And he's famous more for his collection of observations than anything else. Oh, Sahak. That's okay, Sahak. That's tomorrow, my friend. Anyway, Tycho Brahe is... my dog is so affectionate. He's just laying here in my arms. It's so nice. So Tycho Brahe, he observes all kinds of things. Most notably, the star of 1572, and it's only really it's super important because he's describing things changing in the stars. Now, Aristotle had said, no, nothing changes in the heavens. Things are unchanging and stay exactly the same. But Brahe's observations say otherwise. So that's no big deal. He dies, and his research assistant, Kepler, finally is able to do something. Now, Kepler is important because he is a guy that actually has mathematical skills. Okay, Brahe was just kind of an observer type, but he really couldn't make connections. Kepler comes up with the 3 laws of planetary motion. He says, look, planets, they revolve around the sun. They don't go in circles. They have elliptical orbits. And the farther that you are away from the sun, the slower you orbit along that elliptical pattern. And Kepler is a big deal. I mean, he's the first guy that's using mathematics to prove his theories, which we're going to see is going to become a thing. So if this sounds familiar to science, then it should, because the whole idea of science is someone does an experiment, other people can replicate that experiment, and it has to be provable, and it has to be, why don't you come to this side, Laura? My daughter is joining us. And it has to be provable, and it has to be able to be replicated or duplicated. So that's that. Galileo is a guy that is super talented. And you've heard of Galileo, even if you don't remember the other guys, you've heard of Galileo and you probably remember him because Galileo, oh, my daughter actually got like dressed and put on like a little bow and everything, and it all matches. We have Lieben joining us today, Lorelai. So Galileo is not only a guy that believes in the heliocentric theory. He's not only a guy that studies the stars, an astronomer. Don't mix that up with an astrologer in your essays. An astrologer is somebody who believes in like horoscopes and stuff, basically that the stars dictate our fates. Astron with an in, those are people who study the stars. That's the word you want to use for this. And also these guys believe in heliocentric, sun-centered universe, not geocentric, which would be the earth-centered. So Galileo is, we had a question, Marlene?
So an astronomer, isn't just a person who studies a star. Aren't they also someone who studies the planets and how they revolve around?
Absolutely. I was using the term too narrowly. I got called out by my 9-year-old daughter because my definition was flawed. So, thank you. So Galileo also is the kind of dude that builds his own telescope to observe the stars. And in those stars, he notices like, hey, wait a second, the moon isn't perfect. Again, more damage to Aristotle's theory that the stars are perfect and unchanging, which really, if you just stare up at the sky at night for a long time, you'll notice it changes. Sometimes you'll see a shooting star or whatever. Aristotle was in denial about that, despite the fact he was writing in Greece. He did not get it because the denial is in Egypt, the Nile River. Anyway, that was not a very strong joke, and I apologize for that.
I got it.
Thank you. Galileo also makes several advancements to physics in that he is experimenting with things. He comes up with the law of inertia, that things are at rest until they're acted upon. He says that when things are dropped from a high height, he actually goes to the Tower of Pisa, drops things off the top of it, and says that, you know what, if you didn't have air, that those things would be falling at exactly the same rate. So you would have a bowling ball theoretically would be the same rate as feathers to the ground. It would get there at the same time if it were not for air. He's saying there's resistance and that causes that. Here's a joke. What's heavier, a bowling ball or a bowling ball made of birds' feathers? The bowling ball made of birds' feathers, because you have to deal with what you did when you plucked all those feathers out from all of those birds to create a bowling ball. Thank you, daughter.
Because you're subconscious.
Yes. So Galileo is most famous, perhaps, for his kerfluffle with the Catholic Church. Galileo is not like Copernicus. He is not gently dealing with the Pope. Instead, this guy is like full on saying like, hey, anybody who believes that the earth is the center of the universe is a big dumb. That they are not smart at all, they're complete idiots, blah, 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 blah. Well, Galileo gets called in to the Catholic Church, and they torture him and put him on trial. And he says, you know what, guys, I was wrong about everything. Oftentimes, Galileo is used as kind of a martyr for the scientific movement, someone who suffers for science. That's kind of inaccurate. If he was truly a martyr, he would have died for what he believed in, and he wouldn't have reversed his beliefs. There is a story, probably not true, that during his trial he said, or somebody said, like, so everything in space it stays the same. It is fixed and unchanging. And he mutters under his breath, and yet it moves. That's probably not true, but it's a good story. Anyway, he lives his life under house arrest for the rest of his life, and he's not allowed to write anything. So I guess he didn't want to die, but he's technically not a martyr in my eyes. How about that handsome fella right there?
He's ugly.
I think he's handsome. And his name is Isaac Newton. And Isaac Newton, supposedly, according to cartoons and stuff, was sitting under a tree and
An apple tree.
in an apple tree, and an apple hits him on the head. This is actually not true. First of all, the story is just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. This guy is a genius. He doesn't need an apple to hit him on the head to figure out gravity. It's not like he didn't know gravity existed until an apple hit him on the head. That's just dumb. It was actually originally a fig tree that hit him on the head, although over time it's been changed to an apple. My dog left. Well, can you get me a water from the fridge, please?
Yeah.
And the whole idea of him discovering gravity is ridiculous. It's not like anybody discovered gravity. Everyone knew that they weren't flying off into the atmosphere. What he did was he took a look at all of these other scientists, and he said, look, I'm the guy who's going to take all of that and then combine it with a unified theory. And that unified theory is gravity. The whole idea that not only are we stuck to the earth because of a force, but also because that's the way and the reason that planets move at different distances, like Kepler said. That's why inertia works, like Galileo said. He combines everybody into this book called the Principia Mathematica. And the Principia Mathematica, it's principles of mathematics, basically. 1687. Good date to know. I'm going to type that. 1687. Nope, not that. Let's try again. And in that 1687 is when he publishes that book. A lot of times they call it the synthesis of the scientific revolution, because it takes all this work that other people were doing and it synthesizes it. It puts it all together in a unified whole. Everybody loves bacon, so let's talk about it. But actually, this is Francis Bacon. LOL. He doesn't even look like bacon. Francis Bacon, along with Rene Descartes, those guys are kind of credited with the development of the modern scientific method. Galileo really comes up with the idea that you need to experiment, but these guys are the ones that come up with like the formal rules for it. Bacon first. Bacon is an inductive reasoning guy. He believes that you need to experiment and not dismiss anything. All viewpoints should be heard. So he would say, hey, I'm walking in a room. I want to turn on the TV. I think that if I walk over to the power button and press power, the TV will come on. But I must try everything. So he'll try the power button. That worked. Turn it off. But we got to make sure everything else. So he goes around the whole room trying a whole bunch of different things until finally he's tried everything and he's like, our conclusion, it was the power button. Bacon is interesting for that because of the experimental method and stuff. Oh, my daughter just turned off my... You press right there's the power button. So I don't think that affected you, but I went dark just a second. This has a straw. Get a straw, silly goose. So that's Bacon. Now this guy, and I know you're like, yeah, like a hypothesis, but also experimental method. The whole idea of experimenting, which is like common sense if you're a scientist, right? You always do the experiment stuff. Sherlock Holmes, everyone always says that he's deductive. He's actually inductive, like Bacon would have said. Sherlock Holmes will observe a bunch of different things and then come up with a conclusion or a hypothesis, and that would be Like he'll walk up to you and be like, "Oh, I noticed that your shoes are untied, so you must be careless. And then I also noticed you didn't comb your hair, and perhaps that is because you were in a hurry. So perhaps you threw on your shoes in a hurry. So I'm going to assume that you are late." And everybody's like, "Whoa, how'd you do that, Sherlock Holmes?" And he didn't deduce it so much as he used inductive reasoning in order to figure it out. All right, this handsome boy right here, this Rene Descartes. And Rene Descartes is a really important guy. First of all, he says, you can't have anything unless you can prove it. So, first thing, me, not me, Mr. Oliver, me, Descartes, says, you got to be able to prove that you exist. How do I know I exist, says Descartes. And that's a hard question. Like, how do you prove you exist? So you'd say, well, I can see other people and they talk to me. How do you know that's not a dream? Oh, well, I can interact with this table or that chair. I can sit in it, or I can sit at the table. Well, Descartes would say, what if it's all still a dream, or you're just imagining that? Oh, okay. But wait a second. I can think. And if I can think, and if I can conceive of all of these things, I must exist. Because if I didn't exist, I wouldn't be able to do all of that. And therefore, the famous quote, I think, therefore I am. So Descartes is deductive. That's always the way I remember it. Deductive. It's actually Descartes, but deductive reasoning. That you have to figure things out based on the evidence. So you take all of this evidence, and actually works very well hand in hand with our buddy Bacon, because Bacon produces a lot of evidence with all those experiments, and then Descartes says, yo, let's take all that evidence and deduce. I keep emphasizing that, though, so you'll remember it's Descartes, deduce, deductive. That's not the way you say it. I'm just trying to emphasize it. Go get a straw, you goose.
Mommy's getting it.
You can get it right there.
It's too high.
You're a goose. Okay, so anyway, that's Descartes. Descartes is also famous for inventing many mathematical things. So the next time you're doing calculus or something like, or theoretical algebra and stuff like that, you can think that handsome boy right there on the screen for that.
Ooh, who is that ugly man?
He's a handsome boy, and his name's Rene Descartes. This man with a kind face represents not a scientist, but a person that kind of goes with the scientific revolution. So before I've been talking about your scientist types, then there's sort of a popularization of this science, the idea that you need to get it out, that you need to use these principles and apply them to other things. And there are some people who aren't scientists who are doing this, but instead people who are like, you know what, we need to share this with the people. And so Denis Diderot has this cool idea that he is going to edit a group of authors in creating one single unified work that contains the whole sum of human knowledge. What's it called? Anybody know? I'll start describing it. Type it if you know it. You can participate too if you know it.
I know.
My wife knows. She said, Ich kenne, because she only speaks German. So Denis Diderot compiles a series of books. Each one has a different letter. So like the volume one is A.
I know.
Lorelei.
Encyclopedia.
Well, it looks like Sahak was faster than you.
I said it though.
But
I wasn't looking at that.
Sahak said it first. So Sahak, you scored 1. My daughter, 0. Now you got beef with my daughter too, Sahak. So, Dennis Diderot gets all these different authors, and the reason it's controversial because it doesn't sound like it would be at all, right? It sounds like the most innocuous, non-offensive thing in the whole world, but they take all of this information and they say, okay, it's all of equal merit. See, according to the thinking of the time, you would start off with God and Christianity and the Catholic Church and the Pope and blah 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 blah, especially in Catholic France. But he doesn't even start with that at all. He's got entries for A letters, and again,
then B, and then C, and so on and so on.
Remember, raise your hand. But yes, so Diderot is saying everything is judged not by merit, but just a compilation of knowledge. So in the first volume, there's things about blind people, and that was the thing. Like, what? You don't talk about that in public. What kind of thing is that? He has an article on atheism written by the Baron Paul de Holbach, and Holbach is like a hardcore atheist. He believes that Christianity is wrong, wrong, wrong. And someone's at the door? No one comes to our door. Who's at the door, Chase?
A man and the sun.
A man inside the sun.
No, a man and the sun.
Okay, I'm going to answer the door because this is live. Daughter, I need you to talk about the encyclopedia. Don't say anything. Don't use bad words.
Okay.
The encyclopedia
is basically like it's where you could find anything. Like if we wanted to find the start of the hole, we might go to M or S or N, and if you have a little entry on that, and you'd be able to find a lot of it.
Okay, thank you. We do. You only speak German, remember? My wife is just ranting and raving in German.
The guy you were talking about sounds like one of my German people. Was he German?
Diderot? No, he's French. Anyway, the encyclopedia, that was in case you were wondering, someone was trying to sell me something. I don't even know what it was. The encyclopedia, incredibly popular because it had a who's who of all of these different people in Europe who were coming to prominence by writing books talking about how you can apply the scientific method as to many different things, how you can try to make a better society by studying it. Guys like de Holbach, who wrote that atheism thing, were not judged. All of these ideas were just put out there. And of course, the Catholic Church did not like that. So Diderot wasn't able to be publishing the encyclopedia in France, despite the fact the most subscriptions, because it came out on a regular basis, even every time they finished a volume of it, a letter of it, they would put out new ones. He had to publish it with the help of Catherine the Great in Russia. Daughter has a question?
Daddy, I know what replaced the encyclopedia.
What is it?
The internet.
You really, actually, back when you were a kid, when I was a kid, everybody had encyclopedias. Now, the idea of that is probably not. I would be surprised if any of you guys watching this have encyclopedias in your home, because it is like Wikipedia does all of this and can be updated every day. So yeah, it's a nice idea though, Dennis. Who's that fancy lad? Well, that is Francois-Marie Aronnet. Another French guy, in case you couldn't tell from my fanciful pronunciation.
That sounded like.
Yeah, I made it sound French. He is better known by his pen name, Voltaire. And Voltaire is definitely worthy of the term philosophe. Don't chew on the straw. A philosophe is like a philosopher, but it's the French word for it. And he writes on virtually everything. He writes books about French kings, most notably Louis XIV, but he writes a lot of stuff. He writes books criticizing the Catholic Church. He writes books that are, just his opinion about war and about like religious tolerance. He writes about everything. Incredibly quotable, very, very charismatic, very funny and witty. If do yourself a favor, I'm sure I said this in my lecture way back in like October, but do yourself a favor and read Candide. It's a book by Voltaire about this guy that has adventures traveling through Europe. And when he travels through Europe, he encounters people who represent different viewpoints and different things. And he, the Candide main character is just kind of a blank slate. He's just like, doo, 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 doo. And so he sees all these things, and he's trying to get his girl back. She's been abducted or something like that. I don't remember. It's been a while. Anyway, it's a genuinely funny book written back in the 17th century, genuinely still funny today, which I'm being real with you. A lot of stuff that's written that's funny, quote unquote, from back in the day is not hilarious nowadays. Voltaire's stuff holds up. And as you might expect, because he is critical of the Catholic Church, because he's critical of kings, he has all kinds of beef with people throughout his life. Ends up imprisoned in the Bastille at one point, which is a French prison that we'll hear more about tomorrow if you don't remember already. And makes a friendship with the Frederick the Great, Frederick II of Prussia. How do you say, hey wife, how do you say the Hohenzollern in correct German?
I'll pronounce it.
No, this is her. Nine, no. Hohenzollern! Say it loud.
Hohenzollern.
See? German. This kind-faced boy is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, if I'm going to remember a philosopher, it's going to be Voltaire or Rousseau. Better remember both of them, though, because Rousseau, for some reason, I feel like he shows up more on the AP test. Voltaire would be I think, your quintessential, your perfect example of a philosopher. But Rousseau is this guy, and he writes on a number of different topics, and he's extremely influential. One of his big things is that society makes you worse. You don't usually see this in the 17th and 18th century. He's an 18th century guy. You don't usually see this. He is criticizing society for making you a bad person. He's saying you'd be better off just off on an island somewhere, growing up away from civilization. Because despite the fact it's called civilization,
It's not very civilized.
Yeah, it makes you bad. It makes you greedy. It makes you selfish. It makes you bad. Sometimes this is called the noble savage hypothesis. It's the idea that the savages of these islands and stuff were better. Nowadays, we don't really like using that word savage because of the whole, well, I mean, I know kids do all the time, like, hey, that's savage, man. So I guess if you could adapt that, and you could be like, man, that's noble savage, man. That was very righteous of you.
I don't think teens today will say that.
Yeah, you're probably right. Rousseau also writes about early development of children. And he says that, hey, guys, you need to educate. Everybody needs to educate. All these guys are pro-science, pro-education. That should go without saying. But Rousseau is like, hey, little kids, they can absorb information, but guess what? Maybe we shouldn't treat them like adults first thing out the gate. They should have a time to play, because when they play, they're learning in their own way. Now, because it's the 18th century, and because he's a man, he's like, yeah, because, little girls need to play with dolls, because that's going to be their life, raising babies. That's the only thing they're good for. So, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, that's offensive.
Yes.
Okay, is there a huge delay that you just now heard me talk about the Bastille? Yes, you're right. This guy changes the views of the people, right? Rousseau? Okay, the fall of the Bastille is 1789. That hasn't happened yet. Rousseau is. You just said no. It's hard to have a conversation with this chat because you guys have a delay, and now he said yes.
Another reason why to not like Sahak.
No, Sahak is a great kid, wonderful kid. He's a little confusing right now. Thank you, Diana. Are you another student from a different place? Where are you from, Diana?
Daddy, I'm itchy.
I know, baby. You might need some anti-itch stuff on your arm. Don't keep scratching. Okay. Oh, okay, Sahak. My daughter apologizes. Apologize.
Sorry.
Okay. So, anyway, that's Rousseau. Let's see what else we got here. New York! Wow, it's really cool that people, like 3 of my students showed up, but somebody from New York showed up. I appreciate that, Diana. Anyway, Adam Smith, I'm throwing him in here with the philosophes. That's kind of dicey to do that. But it's because I'm saying these guys are coming up with new ideas that influence society. Rousseau influences society in a number of ways about education, about judging civilization and whether or not you can. Rousseau also talks about how you have to have an agreement between the ruled and the rules and the general will. All of those are things that he believes as well. I didn't emphasize them as much because I didn't figure they were very likely to show up on the test. But Adam Smith is definitely going to show up on the test. So I'm throwing him in there also because he's 18th century, even though he's later 18th century. Adam Smith is a Scottish philosopher dude that believes that the way people are doing economics is wrong. Mercantilism, in other words, that's his belief. You need to get some anti-itch cream. I'll put it on you. Go get it.
Where is it?
It's the same place it is every time you ask me where it is. Adam Smith says mercantilism is bad. And mercantilism, as we discussed in a previous review, is the idea that the state should control all trade. The state should be making sure that they are making the most money off of everything. Adam Smith says, yo, that is whack, dog. We don't want that. Instead, we want people to serve their own economic, sit down and I'll put this on. Serve their own economic interest. He says, look, if I'm trying to make money, if I own my own business and I'm trying to make money, and you're trying to make money, that's good, because then the competition will make us better businessmen. What's more, where else?
Basically, that's the only part.
Okay. What's more, if we have the government stay out of things, that competition will naturally help the consumer. So my business and your business will compete to get consumers by lowering prices and things like that. And then the state, they'll actually be doing better off because they're going to be making tax money off all this and they'll be doing great. So that's cool. Good for you, Adam Smith. Adam Smith is an advocate of economic liberalism, aka capitalism. Question?
Was Adam Smith the thing, the hypothesis you just talked about that he thought? Was that correct?
Well, it's what we use here in America, so we think so. Because in America, the government doesn't own the businesses, people own the businesses. And in America, the government theoretically stays out of everything. And you can pay your workers whatever you want because, although that's not something we do, but you can pay your workers whatever you want because, you know, hey, that's, you compete with other businesses. It's an invisible hand, Adam Smith said. If you're not paying your people enough, then they'll go work someplace that pays them better. That's his theory, but the invisible hand, very, very key. Yes, question?
In America, you do have to pay your workers at least.
Yes, we have a modified form of capitalism in America. But that Adam Smith, a lot of my students sleep on Adam Smith And that's a terrible mistake, because that guy can show up for economics, he can show up for economic liberalism, and he can show up for the Enlightenment. Economic liberalism, economics is kind of the same thing. I realized that as I was saying it. How about this guy? This guy, I feels like this guy doesn't get a lot of play in
This guy's
school.
cute.
You think he's good looking?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, your standards are getting lower based on looking at all these old men. But sure, the Marquis de Condorcet is a guy that believes in progress. And he believes, yeah, laissez-faire, perfect, Diana. Laissez-faire. Let the government stay out of it. The invisible hand will take care of everything. Perfect. And good on you for knowing that French term. You use that. If you just describe it, that's good on an essay. You put laissez-faire and then describe it, then the reader gets kind of excited about that. I've been a reader, this will be my 7th year this year, and so many students aren't able to use proper terminology. They just describe things, and that's fine. We don't take them down for that. But when someone does use proper stuff, it's like, whoa, that's good. So Condorcet is a guy that believes in progress, and that the Enlightenment is making our society better. He's anti-death penalty as well. He says that's barbaric. The state having the power to murder people, no good. Bad, sad. So he says all of that stuff is bad. Now, this is in opposition with some of the governments of Europe. France did still have a death penalty. So there's that. They will get rid of it eventually, though. But they have it when Condorcet is in charge. Not in charge. He's not in charge of anything. He's just a philosopher. Okay. This is the Baron de Montesquieu. And I love this picture of him because he looks so odd there. He looks kind of like the Emperor from Star Wars before he turns into that, like, the creepy Emperor in Episode 3. The Baron de Montesquieu says, look, government is important for the people, but at the same time, you need a series of checks and balances. And checks and balances keep everything functioning. In America, don't we have this? We have the president, we have, who doesn't make laws, he can suggest laws, but Congress makes the laws and the president signs them. And the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, says whether or not those laws are just or legal according to our Constitution. And Montesquieu would have loved that. He would have loved it. And the Baron de Montesquieu was great for that. He also writes a thing called the Persian Letters, where he pretends to be a traveler. Don't scratch it. I put the anti-itch thing. I'm sorry, baby. Why don't you put on a long sleeve shirt or a Snuggie or something? Where this Persian traveler is coming over to France and observing things. And it's like, things we take for granted might seem strange to a traveler. It's kind of a way of like criticizing some things that are kind of not so great in society. But from the perspective of, it's not me, this is letters from a foreigner. He doesn't understand. But maybe he's right. It's that kind of a thing. So he's definitely a name to know as well. This is not the best picture of Paul de Holbach, but I wanted to include him just because he's such an oddball for the time period. And he is an openly atheistic philosopher. He gets into trouble a lot with the government of France, as you might assume. Question?
What's the purple?
I don't know. I was just looking at that. There seems to be a purple discoloration on this painting in the circle. I don't know why, but it's there. Anyway, de Holbach is, I only mention him because it's so odd to have somebody who is openly atheistic at this point in history. You just don't expect to see it, and he suffers persecution for it, but at the same time, he's also accepted within his circle of fellow French philosophers. I mean, he writes an article for the Encyclopedia, for gosh sakes. So there's that. He writes a book called The System of Nature, which basically says Everything is scientifically moderated. It's not a God is not controlling us day by day. Blah blah blah. Now this is interesting because the Holbach doubts the day-to-day existence of God. The philosophers in general. Now this is in general. I'm using this term for multiple guys here, but many people of this time were not atheists, but they kind of agreed with the Holbach that God didn't interfere on a day-to-day basis. And if you know it, go ahead and type it right now. But the idea is that God is like a watchmaker or a clockmaker, and he created the world, just like a clockmaker creates a clock. And then, after finishing it, what does a clockmaker do? He just sets it down. He doesn't keep fiddling with it. He just sets it down and watches it. Or I guess moves on to doing something else. These guys, nobody guessed it yet. Not monks. Monks would be kind of the opposite.
Nuns?
Deists believed that God created the world and then didn't get involved on a day-to-day basis. A deist would not believe in miracles. A deist would not believe in the efficacy of prayer, the effectiveness of prayer. They would say, look, hey, we're Christian. We believe God created stuff, but we don't believe he's doing stuff on a day-to-day basis. That's a good term to know, especially when you're reading documents for like a DBQ or something like that. If somebody is from the Enlightenment era, defined as basically the 18th century, and they're writing about science stuff or philosophy, you could say like, well, perhaps because he might have been a deist, he was blah, blah, blah. And if it ties into the document, don't create a false tie, but that might give you a POV there. That was not supposed to be. Oh, it's review time. Okay, so I put in a little review here, despite the fact that we have a bit of a delay. And here is the review. So it's kind of like Jeopardy style. This guy formulated the 3 laws of planetary motion. Anybody know? He was a research assistant to Tycho Brahe. Oh, deism? Does deism relate to humanism? Yes, Diana, I would say absolutely. It would just be an extreme version of it. I wouldn't say that anybody in the Renaissance believed that, but it would maybe be, it's a religious ideology that says that humans are more important in a secular way on a day-to-day basis. Not Newton, Kepler. Kepler's absolutely right. Nice going, Sahak. Who formulated the law of inertia? And why is my son logged in as MCO?
It was Chase.
He formulated the law of inertia. Inertia is the idea that an object is at rest until something is affecting it, something is pushing on it, and then it's going to stop again because of, well, gravity is what Newton would say, but this is not Newton. I'll just give you the hint there.
I have a question.
A question? Yes?
Is gravity like a French word because it started in France or anything?
Gravity didn't start anywhere. Gravity's just around.
Is it like from
And Newton was actually English, but
is it from any like Greek?
I don't know. I don't know where gravity comes from. I'm guessing nobody knows this one because nobody responded to it. The law of inertia actually comes from Galileo.
He's not cute.
Who is not cute. Thank you, daughter. We watched Guardians of the Galaxy last night. Thank you, Cassie Carr. We watched Guardians of the Galaxy last night, so now she has a crush on Chris Pratt. Which, I mean, I think most people in America do. Tycho Brahe studied astronomy from an observatory granted by the king of this country. What country was Tycho Brahe doing his thing in? No, you got to type it.
I'm not on it.
Well, get on it. Nope. No, no. You got to type it on yours.
I don't have it on my. I can't type it on my phone.
I'll put it on.
I got YouTube.
Spain is definitely a guess, but I'm not sure it's the best guess.
I bet people start singing. Wait,
Tycho Brahe. It's not Spain.
Chase is my brother, and he's MCO.
It is Denmark, everybody. Denmark.
Which is not Spain.
Denmark. Okay, turn down the volume. There you go. You should be.
It's already muted.
Denmark. See? China? All right. What was the name of Isaac Newton's famous...
Participate in chat.
What was the name of Isaac Newton's famous work? 1687. It's known as unifying the all the ideas of.
Is it encyclopedia?
No. This actually comes before. You're right. It isn't working. I don't know how to make that work. It must be a browser thing.
On phones.
Yeah, I guess so. It was the principles of. Nope, not the 3 laws of motion. My son's kind of spamming. The Principia Mathematica. I'll spell it here for you.
It looks like principle.
Yeah, Principles of Mathematics. It's in absolutely, Diana. I timed you out, Chase. You're spamming my chat.
How do you time it out?
So, yeah, the Principia Mathematica, Principles of Mathematics. It's Latin. Latin remains even today the kind of the language of science. So that's kind of a thing. Okay, he wrote On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres in 1543. The early date should be a clue here. This, yes, Sahak. He argues for a heliocentric theory. He is really the first to do so in the modern era. There were Greeks that believed Aristotle was wrong, but Aristotle was the one the Catholic Church went with as far as his theories went.
Father, was he correct?
Was who correct? The Principia thing? Yeah.
Oh.
We're on a different question now, dear.
Oh.
So the revolutions of the heavenly spheres.
Is it Galileo?
Copernicus. And I liked that you put Nicholas and Copernicus there.
Are those the same people?
Nicholas Copernicus? Nicholas is his first name,
oh.
yes.
I only remember last names.
Well, yeah. And on the test, if you just say Copernicus, you are A-okay. This guy is a philosopher that we almost literally just talked about.
Was it?
Turn down your volume, wife.
Was it Nicholas Caprio?
So he argued for the separation of powers. He argues that you need to have like different branches of government. He was not necessarily an advocate of the republic. It's not Rousseau. He was fine with a monarchy, but he wanted checks on that. Yeah.
Was it Galileo?
Nope.
Or Capri?
Copernicus? No. This guy is the guy that was facing sideways in our picture. There you go. Julie. Wait, do we have another person from like some random other place? Julie, where are you from? I don't think you're from my school. We officially, if Julie is also from another school, we officially have more students from outside Fresno than Fresno students. Yeah, Baron de Montesquieu. Detroit, represent. This is so fun.
Your students are sad because nobody's joining.
Well, no, maybe they're just tired of me. My students apparently have already learned everything they need to learn from me, and they're all going to pass.
Awesome teacher.
Thank you, daughter. All right, this guy argues that the general will was sacred, that we needed to follow the idea of the will of the people. Now, I know I zagged on you here because I said we probably aren't going to talk about this too much. Then I asked a review about it. Oh, you're welcome, Julie. And at the end of this, I'm going to take questions about like essays and stuff. So if anybody has questions about essays or anything like that, I figured I'd answer those.
I thought I see question.
What's up, daughter?
For when I do it, which is a long time away, but I know Clovis won't pay for it. But if I do it, like, are they essay questions? Do they want evidence from the text?
God, yes.
Yes.
Where
do they give you the text?
You have to just know it.
You're basically paraphrasing.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody know about the general will? That was...
I got one of the questions right.
Rousseau.
No, not time out. I actually put a real answer. I got it right. I put Baron D. Monsticu.
Good job, my son.
Put me on timeout.
You'll be out of timeout in just a minute. Rousseau. You can't spam, though. You can't post like 4 in a row.
I'm not spamming.
You were.
Thank you.
Anyway, that is Rousseau. Rousseau argues that the government should follow the will of the people. Absolutely. Now, of course, the problem with that general will thing is that if the people are wrong, if the people are racist or bigoted or whatever, you could end up with the government pushing for some bad things.
Like what?
Well, slavery, for example, in America. That would be an easy example. Okay. This guy wrote Progress of the Human Mind. He argues that society's progresses through stages towards perfection. This is the guy that was also against the death penalty. He believes that as you progress, you actually will eventually get to a utopian type thing. The Marquis, do you get to know his last name? He was a Marquis. That's just a title. It's not his first name. Do you know his last name? He is Marquis.
Rousseau?
You're close, but I think you're trying to say Rousseau.
Rousseau.
No.
Capacity. Capacity.
Capacity?
Good for you.
The Marquis de Capacity. Condorcet.
It's close enough.
There you go. Saw came in right as soon as I typed that. Yeah, absolutely. This guy's the atheist guy that writes The System of Nature.
I remember him, just don't remember his name.
French guy, Paul
Henderson?
Paul Henderson. Yep, a good French name. Henderson! Who is this guy? Chase, who's the philosopher that wrote The System of Nature? He's an atheist. The Baron.
Thomas More.
Yep, there's Julie representing New York. Thomas More writes.
Holbeck!
Right. Don't just yell. De Holbach, absolutely. Nice job, Julie from New York.
She must have a good teacher, maybe half as good as you.
This ruler published the encyclopedia in their home country when it was banned in France. Well, it hasn't even shown up on there yet. See, I opened the window so we can see. He published the encyclopedia. You gotta cover your mouth when you cough, young lady. You better not make me sick.
I know who he is.
You do?
But I don't know his name. Galileo. Capri Sun.
Careful. Did you break anything?
No.
Good.
Was it Capri Sun?
No. So this ruler published. Wow, I feel like our lag is getting worse.
Yeah, I heard that.
Because this is not even the same question here that it's showing over there.
Was it Galileo?
Are we still going okay? Is everything fine? What's happening? Yeah, there we are, finally. Okay, so this ruler published the encyclopedia when it was banned in France.
Galileo.
No, Julie. Oh, you know, you're right. Julie's Detroit, and Diana's from New York. Sorry, Julie. I didn't mean to.
No, it's definitely around.
Yeah, I know. The computer, it was kind of being wacky there. But the question was, this ruler published the encyclopedia in their country when it was banned in France. And then after this, I'm going to take some essay questions, or just any questions you might have about the grading of the AP test or anything like that. I'll just go ahead and tell you because I still.
Capri Sun?
Capri Sun is a drink.
Was it that capacity guy?
No.
Honduras?
Condorcet is close. You got to learn to pronounce French words like. Diderot is close, but we're talking about the guy or person that published Diderot.
Capitata.
I'll give you a hint. It was an enlightened an enlightened ruler that was a lady.
Oh, Queen as well.
Queen Mary.
Catherine the Great. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing my thing there. I'm gonna close this now, and then I am going to.
Me.
Yep, I don't think they can see it. Okay, calm down, sit. Okay, calm. Okay, are we back to just having me on the screen? I know my hair's not combed or anything. It's Saturday, I didn't feel like it. And that's Dottie. Okay, so you guys can see me? Cool. All right, so calm down, daughter. Okay, so
Do I need to take her away?
no, I think she's good. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say, if you guys had any questions about like the essays or how they're graded or anything like that, you could hit me up with that right now.
How come everybody's saying yeah?
Talk sometimes, he's just very positive. He says, right, yeah.
Is Peter here today?
I don't know. If Peter's here, he's not talking. Maybe 10 o'clock to 11:30 was too early. But I kind of went through that faster than I thought I was going to. So if anybody has any other questions, let me know. Look how much grays in my hair, daughter. Look at that.
Don't tell me you're old aging.
I am old aging. Okay, so any questions about like essays or anything? I guess I'll just talk. So basically, if you have a question, pop in. When you grade, they have you sit at a table with a bunch of other graders, and you read some sample stuff first. They usually show up a couple of days before the readers get there, and those people look at a bunch of sample responses, and they decide what the best responses are. And so, in answer to your question, Diana from New York, there is a 15-minute reading period for the DBQ. Although what they do is they give you a 55-minute multiple choice for 80 questions. Not great, but that's what they do. Sit down here, Bob. And then they'll give you a little break. And then you'll come back, and they'll give you an essay book. And all of the essays are in that book. In the reading period, everyone says it's for the essay, the DBQ. But you can use that time to glance at the essays and try to strategize. What I would do is I would do the DBQ first, then I would attack the 4 essay questions, the short ones, then I would do the long essay question because it is that's an order of percentage it affects you. Anyway, the readers all go off of those sample responses for what is a good response and a bad response, and what's a good example of following the rubric there. And I genuinely believe that the people grading your essays really do a good job. I'm biased because I'm one of them, but they try so hard to get it right. Everybody tries to help the students as much as possible without actually, giving them credit for something they didn't write. And everybody is very positive. So, any questions? I mean, we could be done. I just wanted to know if anybody had any other questions.
Do they?
But yeah, I answered your question, Diana. I think I already answered it, but yeah. He does not know about history. He knows a lot, but he doesn't know a lot. Okay, well, here's what I would do now, just in case there's no questions. I'll wait for a minute, but I'll see if there's any other questions. But what I would do next, if I'm you, I have this weekend. We got about 2 weeks at this point, right? And so I would be focusing on what you don't know. If you feel great about the Renaissance, don't study the Renaissance. I would know some dates. I would, hey, Chase, can you negotiate with Mom about lunch off camera?
What? No, the portal's right there.
Okay, you're still on camera. Okay, so anyway, my son's hungry. In Fresno, it's 11:11, so he's hungry.
Is it different time zone in New York?
Yeah, in Detroit, I'm pretty sure too, is 3 hours. Detroit might be 2 hours. Anyway, so I would be studying some dates. You want to know some dates because sometimes they'll ask you questions that are along the lines of hey, which one of these things in the 1600s was blah 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 blah, or they'll have a date on some passage or in a DBQ even in one of the documents where knowing what time period it's written is really going to do you solid. So I would know at least some of the major dates. And beyond that, key people, I would know key people. I know in my class I've been doing lots of first person things, a lot of primary sources to hopefully get you used to that, because you're going to see a lot of those on the multiple choice. And I don't know about your teachers in Detroit and or New York, but I know that there's definitely there's going to be a lot of primary sources on the test, and I'm going to give a practice test next week. Maybe they'll give a practice test too. Okay, it looks like nobody else had any more questions whilst I was saying that. So, review what you don't know. Dates. Know at least the key dates. And, like, I'm talking like key dates. Like, if I say 1688, you should be able to go, oh, Glorious Revolution. If I say 1588, you should be able to go, oh, Spanish Armada. You know, things like that. If you're not doing that, at least glance through your textbook in the section that has a little thing about the dates and just go like, oh, that's right. Oh, I know that. I know those dates. Don't worry so much about when things were written, per se. Worry about when big events happened. And the third one was practice test. If you have a book that has practice test with primary sources, do that. Okay? Well, anything you should focus on for those 4 short responses? Oh, well, that's sad, Diana. I'm sorry.
What?
The essays do have to have textual evidence. Yes. He's kind of answering your question from way back. And for the 4 short responses, they are completely random. Last year, the one I graded, they put me on one that was, it had a quote, actually 2 quotes, and then it was like, oh, these 2 quotes, and then you got to explain what they're talking about, what the difference is between them, and then why would they have written this when they wrote it. So you had to know, like, oh, what was going on in the 17th century, basically, so that you could drop that info. Okay? If you have any questions at all, I'm going to put my email on the thing. You can always email me, and I'll answer. I'm going to have another review tomorrow. You can hit me up that time. Yeah, I would make flashcards with those dates, and you should be fine. If you want a complete list, there are so many lists on the internet. I believe on my website, which is bullardoliver.com, you can go there, and there's a section on AP, and then there's a little picture of me in a Snuggie that says review. And I'm pretty sure there's a list of dates. If there's not, I'll put some on there. I'll double check it right after I finish. Okay?
What's next? review?
Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. It's not going to go till 12 p.m. It's going to go till 11:30 or so, or 11:15. Because the French Revolution and Napoleon, to be honest, TBH, it's due for a good essay. I'm waiting for this. I've been waiting for a good French Revolution essay forever. There hasn't been a really good DBQ or essay question for so long, and it's very, very upsetting. My son is apparently making corn dogs, so that if you're wondering what he had for lunch. Okay, any more questions? I think not. If there are, just email me, and have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.